War on one continent, elections on another, and a global economy still trying to find its footing. 2025 was not a quiet year. It was a year of rebalancing of power, of technology, and of how people spend their attention. In this episode, we step back and rewind the past 12 months. The headlines that shook governments, the conflicts that refused to stay contained, the economic moves that hit your wallet, and the cultural shifts that filled your feeds. Welcome to 2025, the year in review, a special episode where we unpack the stories behind the news and ask what they mean for the next decade. In capitals around the world, 2025 felt like a reset. Long-ruling parties lost ground in some countries, while others doubled down on familiar faces, betting that stability was better than change. In the United States, lawmakers spent much of the year locked in familiar stalemates over budgets, healthcare, and national security, even as voters signaled rising fatigue with permanent crisis politics. This wasn't just happening in one country. We saw it everywhere. From street protests to fiery online debates, the sense of division was a constant drumbeat. Globally, elections became less about left versus right and more about stability versus disruption, with many voters choosing whoever promised to dial down the chaos, whether or not that promise could be kept. This shift in what voters wanted redefined political battlegrounds, creating new alliances and fracturing old ones. The year ended with a political landscape that was less predictable, more fragmented, and set the stage for major shakeups in the years to come. Of course, you can't talk about 2025 without discussing the conflicts that dominated headlines and fueled global anxiety. In the Middle East, 2025 was another year of fragile ceasefires and tense negotiations. Each new round of talks raised hopes that this time might be different, only to crash against the reality on the ground. For people living under bombardment or blockade, the word process meant little. Survival was the real agenda. The humanitarian toll was immense, and the diplomatic efforts, though constant, often felt like they were just managing a crisis rather than resolving it. Elsewhere, simmering border disputes and proxy confrontations reminded the world that the post-Cold War dream of a peace dividend is long gone. These weren't isolated events. Conflicts no longer stay regional. They ripple through energy prices, refugee flows, and election campaigns half a world away. We saw how a flare-up in one region could suddenly spike the price of gas in another, or how a diplomatic standoff could reshape trade routes overnight. This sense of permanent instability became the new normal, forcing nations to constantly reassess their security and alliances in a world that felt more connected by crisis than by cooperation. Economically, 2025 was a year of mixed signals. Some countries reported steady growth, but many households saw something different when they opened their bills or refreshed their banking apps. The ghost of inflation still lingered, and the cost of living remained a top concern for people everywhere. Governments leaned on a familiar toolkit: targeted spending, tax changes, and new trade barriers to protect their own industries and voters. It was a high-stakes balancing act between controlling inflation without tipping economies into recession. In practice, that meant a world where tariffs and industrial policy were back at center stage, as nations competed to secure energy, technology, and manufacturing at home. We saw countries pouring money into domestic chip manufacturing, green energy projects, and other key sectors, aiming for self-sufficiency. The phrase globalization is over might be premature, but 2025 proved that globalization, at least, is being renegotiated. The old rules of free trade were being rewritten in real time, creating both new opportunities for some and major disruptions for others. So how do we make sense of it all? If you felt like you spent more time with your headphones on this year, you were not alone. Hundreds of millions of people around the world now make podcasts a weekly habit, and genres like society and culture, education and news are among the most popular. Listeners are not just chasing entertainment. They are looking for meaning and context in a chaotic world. And this year, video became a crucial part of that story. For many younger listeners, podcast now means a show they watch on YouTube or another video platform, not just something they hear on a commute. In 2025, the conversation moved with you from your phone screen to your living room TV to the speaker on your kitchen counter. This shift wasn't just about convenience, it was about a deeper form of engagement. People wanted to see the hosts, react in the comments, and feel like part of a community. It proved that in an age of information overload, people are actively seeking out voices they trust to help them understand the world. When historians look back at 2025, They may not circle it as the year everything changed, but they may see it as the year the world quietly chose its next direction. It wasn't defined by one single, explosive event, but by a series of overlapping transitions in politics, security, and the economy. Governments redrew parts of the economic and security map, often without fanfare, while citizens renegotiated how they consume information and where they place their trust. The threads of 2025, the political polarization, the persistent conflicts, the economic protectionism, and the new ways we consume media are all interwoven. They set the stage for whatever comes next, shaping the challenges and opportunities of 2026 and beyond. As we move into a new year, the real question is not just what happens on the world stage, but how each of us responds, what we pay attention to, who we listen to, and which stories we decide are worth retelling. Thank you so much for joining me on this look back at 2025. If you found this helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. See you in the new year.